Hank, and this is a strategy video on the game Pandemic. This is such a great game because it's so challenging. It takes so much thought and planning and teamwork to even have a chance to win. And once you get really good at it, you're going to win just over 50% of the time. And if you're not there, then keep watching this video, and I'm going to go through each area of the game to give a few helpful tips and pointers and tactics that you can use at different times that will help improve your winning percentage. So first off, I will cover the two most important keys to the game. And the first one is that you really need to find a cure in the first 3 rounds. So by round, I mean going through everybody's turn once. So after everybody has taken 3 turns, you really have to have found your first cure. If you haven't, your chances of winning go down dramatically. You shouldn't give up. Don't give up on the game completely. If you get really lucky for the rest of the game, you can still win. But odds are not in your favor. So you might want to be riskier than you might otherwise be because you know your chances are slim. But really, just try to get that cure in the first 3 rounds. Do whatever you can to get that cure right away. The second really important key to winning Pandemic is that once you get down to 2 rounds left, plan out those final 2 turns for each player. You know there's 2 rounds left because the player deck is really your timer. So each player, so in a 4-player game, each player gets 2 cards for each of their turns. So once you get to 16 cards left in that player deck, you know each player only has 2 more turns. So you just have to be really, really strategic about those last few actions, where one player maybe goes after the red cure, and they trade this card to this player. This player goes after the yellow cure, they go to this research station, or maybe that player puts down a research station on their turn so that it makes it easier for another player to get to that research station and cure the last disease. And yeah, basically every single action you just need to plan out. So those are the 2 most important keys to winning Pandemic. And there are a ton of other tactics that are also very important, and so I'm going to go over plenty of those as the video continues. On the topic of roles, though, you know, who's the scientist, who's the dispatcher, I'm going to leave that to my blog. I'm not going to talk about it anymore really during this video, but go to theforbiddenlimb.com. That's my blog. I will go over roles in detail, which roles are really good, which ones are not as good, when to use each role, turn order, preferred turn order for roles, that kind of thing. But that's all I will say about roles right now. Just go to theforbiddenlimb.com for that text version of this analysis with more detail. But I will talk a little bit about transportation and how you get from one city to another. It is another one of those super important parts of Pandemic because if you can be more efficient in your transportation, you can save yourself actions, you can do more on your turn, and being just a little bit more efficient will really add up throughout the game. The main piece of advice I have for you on that is just to treat each action like gold. And it's really easy to forget about some modes of transportation, particularly the charter flight. So you should use the drive and the direct flight and the charter flight and the shuttle flight. You should use them all in a game of Pandemic. And if you're not using one of them, if you haven't used one throughout the game, you probably haven't traveled as efficiently as you could have. As far as treating disease goes, it is way, way, way more important to treat a 3-cube city than a 2-cube. And that's pretty obvious when you say it out loud, but my point is that it's way more important than it is to treat a 2-cube city over a 1-cube or a 1-cube over a 0. Those 3-cube cities are the ones that cause the outbreaks, and the outbreaks cause you to lose the game. So those are the ones you need to be careful of. Since oftentimes in Pandemic you are faced with a decision where you can treat one 3-cube city or you can treat another 3-cube city, but you can't do both. So which one do you choose? I'm going to go over the 3 criteria that you should use when you're trying to make this decision. The first one being how likely is one of the cities to be drawn from the infection deck. Usually you know the top few cards or so on the infection deck, so if this is one of them, then you probably want to go for that one and take the cube or cubes off of that one. But if an epidemic card is likely to be drawn from the player deck, this can affect your decision. So if you think that's a pretty high probability, more so than it being drawn from the infection deck, then you'd want to take cubes off a city that was in the infection deck discard pile. The next criteria that you'd want to consider is which city is connected to the most 3-cube cities. Hopefully you don't put yourself into a situation where you have a 3-cube city connected to another 3-cube city, but it happens. It definitely happens. So if that is the situation, definitely take cubes off the one that's connected to another 3-cube city. So if the first 2 criteria don't help you make your decision, then you can fall to the third one, which is how many connections are there to that city. So one with more connections, like Hong Kong, would be much more important to cure than something that has fewer, like in Osaka. And if all 3 of those don't help you make your decision, then you might as well just flip a coin. When you are thinking about eradicating one color disease, so like the red disease is cured, let's think about eradicating it. Only do it if you can do it in 2 consecutive turns. So for example, I go and I remove half of the red cubes, and then the person next to me goes and they eradicate the other half so that it's completely gone after my turn and the next player's turn. Then do it, because it is super valuable to do it, especially if it's early in the game. But if it's later in the game, or you can't do it in 2 consecutive turns, then just don't bother. Don't waste your actions just trying to clear out cubes. You can probably better use those actions by helping to cure the next disease. When it comes to the infection deck, it's really pretty simple. You want to know what's on top of it. And that's pretty easy to do early in the game. When the infection rate is pretty low, you should know either what's on top of it, or know that you have no information about what's on top of it because you've already gone through all the cards from the previous epidemics. Later in the game, when the infection rate gets higher, this gets really hard, but any information that you can get about what's on top of that infection deck can really help you preemptively move your disease fighters to the right cities. 5. This is an important number in Pandemic because you need 5 cards of a single color to cure disease. So when you start discarding the same color, say like black, for transportation and for discarding cards to make room for other cards in your player hand, be careful that you don't discard too many of a single color. If you start discarding all blacks and you don't even have 5 blacks left in the collective team's hand, and what's left in the player deck, you can't win. So when you've discarded like 2 of a single color, that's about all you should do. You should really keep the rest of them for curing that disease. Unless you've already cured it. Once you've cured that disease, obviously get rid of it left and right, make room for the cards that you actually care about. And when you have like 3 of one color in your hand, start making your way towards that part of the world. So like if you have 3 yellow cards in your hand, go over towards South America or Africa so that other people on your team can get over there to give you the rest of the cards that you need to get your 5 and cure the disease. The last thing I'm going to talk about is tuning your pandemic strategy and getting better game after game after game. If you notice that you are losing all of your games because of the outbreak meter, then the next game you need to focus more on making sure that you have as few 3-cube cities out there as possible throughout the game. Just force yourself to lose a different way. If you find that you're running out of player cards every game, and that's how you lose, then you need to be more efficient with your turns. If you notice that you're always running out of cubes of a single color, make sure that you're not focusing too much on a single disease. Make sure you have a more general containment effort going on in your games so that you can control all of them and not just a single one. So this is what I'm talking about. When you figure out how you're losing, that's a good thing. Then you can focus on improving that part of your play, and then after a few games of doing that, then I think you'll see that your winning percentage increases dramatically. So that is the end of this video. Thanks for hanging out and talking about pandemic strategies with me. I hope you learned something that maybe you can use in a future game, or just thought about your own strategies or tactics in a different way. If you want more, you can go to my blog, theforbiddenlimb.com, and get a text version of this where I go into more detail. So definitely check that out. Also, click subscribe if you want to hear about more of these videos, because I put out videos on tabletop game strategies all the time. And otherwise, yeah, if you have a game that you really want me to analyze, put it in the comments and I will add it to my ever-growing list of games that I plan to do. But otherwise, until next time, I guess I will see you later.